Hi, I am Mrs. Gerhart. I am going to lead you on your figurative language adventure today. Um, so, all I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through and talk about different types of figurative language that you might see in writing and ways the authors try to use them to make their writing more interesting. So, first off, we have style. So, style is really just how the author tells the story. We tell stories in different ways depending on our audience, right? Like I'm going to probably tell my husband a story a different way than I'm going to tell my students the same story, just because my audience is different. People might create some sort of writing to inform people or entertain people. Those are all ways the author uses style. So really, uh, their style tells you something about what you're reading. For syntax is the arrangement of words to create an interesting sentence. I had kind of a hard time really figuring out how to tell people exactly or describe syntax exactly because I think most of the time when we see a sentence, we see a sentence and a sentence is a sentence, right? But when I looked up like different ways to describe syntax, one thing that came up was Yoda. So Yoda is a character in Star Wars, if you didn't know that. And he has different ways of speaking that makes his character more interesting and makes you pay more attention to what that character's doing or saying. So, like where I would say, there is no greater gift than a generous heart, right? That's just a regular sentence that we would say in everyday English. Yoda would say it as no greater gift there is than a generous heart. The way that they use syntax tells you how we should kind of view that character. Tone is really just how the story is told or the mood of the story. You've seen tone before. It's hard to really describe what tone is, but stories can be scary, they can be funny, they can be angry. It all has to do with the way that the words are said or used within the story. So it's really just like you're watching a horror film because you have spooky music and you have probably people screaming and running away from things. That helps tell you the mood of the story. It's supposed to be scary. Word choice is just the intentional use of words to get your message across. So we all use words for different audiences. I'm going to say that a lot because that just really is truly how a lot of these things come about, is how we interact with audiences. So if I were presenting to teachers, sometimes I have to do that. If I were presenting to teachers, I would probably use really big words, or I'd use terminology that's teacher terminology. But when I'm when I'm talking to students, um, I'm probably going to break down a lot of the things that I'm saying more. You wouldn't necessarily know what all of the big, huge terms that teachers use mean. So I would just break it down. I'd make it simpler to understand for students. That is what word choice is. It's just what words you're selecting to get the story across. So denotation is really just the actual definition of a word. So if I gave you the sentence, a teacher walked into the classroom, you don't really draw anything from that other than the teacher walked in the classroom. There's no feelings that are attached to it. It's literally just the definitions of the word, right? On the other hand, we have connotation. I will say though, denotation, definition. Connotation is not definition. I mean, it is, but it isn't. Connotation is the thoughts and feelings that we have about a word. So it's your immediate reaction. So one way that we could talk about connotation is the word test. A test is just a measurement to show how much you know about a subject. But when I say test, you might have a completely different reaction to the word test. Think about your reaction right now. Think about it. What word comes up? Exactly. So that's connotation. If we're talking about it, connotation doesn't have necessarily a negative or a positive feeling that goes with it. It kind of goes both ways. You might have like really good feelings about something, and you might have really negative feelings about something. So if we're going back to the teacher who walked into the classroom, you could have a sentence that says, this is saying the exact same thing. The smiling educator strolled into the peaceful classroom. So that gives you more of a positive connotation, right? You think, oh, this teacher's walking in and it's sunshine and lollipops and it's just amazing unicorns and rainbows, right? If you have another one that says the cranky schoolmarm stormed into the noisy, chaotic circus, you're going to have a different picture. It's going to be like bedlam. Everything's going to be flying everywhere. Connotation is just what words you select to create a feeling in your reader, or that's what the author does too. A euphemism is a word or phrase that we use instead of a more harsh thing. So we do this all the time. For instance, my dad passed away a while ago, but you just heard me say my dad passed away. Honestly, I could say my dad is dead. The passed away is a euphemism. It's less harsh than just saying, oh, my dad is dead, right? So we do this in conversations all the time because we don't want to like hurt people's feelings, and it's not a bad thing to do. It just is something we do in society. Onomatopoeia is my favorite word in the English language, just because I like to say it because it's fun. Onomatopoeia, say it, onomatopoeia. It's a word that sounds like the sound. So there's some examples up there in the box, but we use, like, if you're talking about like ringing a doorbell, it's ding dong. That's onomatopoeia. If you're talking about a dog barking, woof, onomatopoeia. It's a word that sounds like the sound. Alliteration is something else that we use a lot in writing. It's just the repetition of similar sounds. So I have a couple examples on there. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Tongue twisters oftentimes have alliteration in them. We also have like sentences that have it doesn't have to be like every word. So sometimes you hear the hush sounds of hummingbird wings. You have that sound as you're going through. That's alliteration also. Hyperbole, I love hyperbole. I always say it's a teenager's favorite way to talk. And I mean, it's only kind of an insult because like a lot of teenagers do this, but it's when we exaggerate things. Like I heard a kid in the hallway say, I was literally dying. Literally is such a hyperbolic word. Because the person wasn't literally dying. They were just probably embarrassed. You use it for like emphasis or effect. Like, I have recorded this screencast 1,000 times. I haven't, but it sure feels like it. It's been like 4, but it feels like 1,000. That's hyperbole. For imagery, you guys have seen this before too. It just means it appeals to all the senses. So however the author uses words or draws pictures with their words, that's imagery. So we have sight, smell, taste, sound, touch. All of our senses just like kind of get involved when we use imagery. Simile, I know you've seen before, comparing two unlike things using like or as. Like she was funny as a clown, right? She was tall like a tree in the prairie. I don't know. It's when you use like or as. A metaphor is a comparison of two different things. So I do want you to look at the cartoon that we have up there. I'm not going to read it for you, but I want you to think about what exactly is being compared there. You guys have seen metaphor before too. Like I'm not telling you anything new about metaphor, but it is something that you need for when you examine other people's writing. Extended metaphor might be different. So extended metaphor, they're still comparing things. It's just something that might go a long time in the text. So like if you think about song Firework, which is what I have up here by Katy Perry. You go through it and it's talking about the spark. It's going to ignite the light. It's going to shine. It's going to be the 4th of July because you're a firework, right? That's an extended metaphor because it goes on for multiple lines rather than just one line. Like usually a lot of metaphors, just like one little simple one. That one goes on and on and on. Personification is when we give human qualities to things that are not human. So there's the car up there. It was suffering. If I say my plant was sad because it needs water, that would be personification because my plant's not going to be sad. So personification. Symbol is just something in a story that represents something else. You guys have seen this before too. A lot of symbols that we have hearts. Heart is the symbol of love a lot of times. Flag is a symbol of America, of freedom, of patriotism. So that is to say also that symbols can have multiple meanings in writing. The dove often means like peace. And then we have the skull. The skull can mean like death or danger. Like we have these meanings that are kind of interlaced in our language that we automatically understand when we see these things in pieces of writing. Symbols are a lot like archetypes, though. If you think about the archetypes that we had talked about ever since we started doing mythology, when we see something over and over and over, it's going to represent something. So that's exactly the way it works with symbols and archetypes. We see water, it means rebirth. We see fire, it often means death. Like those are the same things. Mythology is also awesome for talking about illusion because illusion is an indirect reference to something else. We use illusion all the time in our language, and we use it in mythology all the time, mythology is often something that is alluded to in media. So if I'm talking about, like, I'm going to sit in my thinking chair. I'm sorry, that isn't mythology, but I bet you all know what I'm referring to when I say thinking chair, right? Blue's Clues. I did the hand motion, even if you guys didn't see me. So it was when we're referencing something else. If I say, oh, she was hit with Cupid's arrow, that means she fell in love, right? Like that's an allusion to something in mythology. Verbal irony is really just sarcasm. It's when you say something, but you actually mean the other thing. So really that's it. If I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here 12 hours today. Am I really? Probably not. But that's verbal irony. That's sarcasm. I mean the opposite. Point of view is really just who's telling the story. We have first person, which is I, me, our, that kind of thing. Second person is you. We don't see you as much when we're talking about like pieces of writing. Usually it's directions, or it can be implied you, like in Mortal Kombat when the dude says, "Get over here." That's implied you. And then we have third person. We have omniscient, limited, and objective. Omniscient means like everybody, they hear every thought. Limited is just like one character's thought, and objective is no one's thoughts. So that's the quick version of this whole thing. Hopefully that works for you. So have a good one.